Let me tell you about the time I met my husband, Aaron. It was a regular Tuesday, and I was working at Marigold Fine China and Ceramics, surrounded by fancy dishes and glasses that cost more than my rent. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked a guy who seemed pretty out of place with his casual jeans and a t-shirt that looked like he might have worn it to a concert or something. "Hey, need a hand finding something?" I asked, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear as I approached him. He turned around, and yeah, he was kinda cute, not that I was looking. Yeah, thanks. It's my mom's birthday, and she's big on teapots and all that. I don't know where to start. I showed him around, pointing out some of our best sellers and the finer pieces that would make his wallet cry. He chuckled at my straightforwardness. "So, you're telling me that little pot is worth $1,000, he asked, eyebrow raised as he picked up a delicate teapot painted with roses. "Believe it or not, yeah. It's hand-painted, limited edition," I explained, watching him carefully replace it. We spent a good half-hour chatting as we walked through the aisles. He had a good sense of humor, making jokes about how a single plate cost more than his weekly groceries. "I'm Aaron, by the way," he said, extending his hand. "Elise," I replied, shaking his hand. "So, Aaron, picked any favorites yet?" He nodded towards a set with gold trim and a subtle floral pattern. "That one. It's beautiful, and I think my mom would love it." "Does it come with a don't break me guarantee?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Afraid not. But it does come with a pretty fancy box." While I wrapped up his purchase, he glanced at his phone, then looked up at me. "Hey, this might sound weird, but can I have your number? You've been really helpful, and, I don't know, maybe I could get your advice on something else?" "Like what? More teapots?" I joked, handing him his bag. "Or maybe just a cup of coffee," he countered with a smile. I wrote down my number, still thinking he was just being polite. Guys like him didn't really go for girls like me, ones who spent their days selling overpriced china to people who had too much money. But the next morning, he called. The coffee date with Aaron wasn't just coffee. Turned out, the guy had a knack for making me laugh, and before we knew it, we were grabbing dinner instead of just a caffeine fix. "So, Elise, tell me something. How does someone with a no-bullshit attitude end up selling fancy plates to rich folks?" Aaron asked as he sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim of his cup. I shrugged, poking at my salad. "Gotta pay the bills somehow. Plus, it's kind of fun watching people freak out over which set of plates will impress their snooty friends more." He laughed, that hearty kind of laugh that made you want to join in. "Fair enough. You're pretty down to earth. I like that." The conversation flowed as easily as the coffee. We talked about everything, movies, books, our crazy families. He shared stories about his job as an architect, and I told him about my dreams of maybe opening a little cafe someday. "Wait, you cook?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "More like I bake. Cupcakes, pies, you name it. My grandma taught me," I confessed. "Damn, a baker and a plate expert? That's some combo." It felt good, you know? Being with someone who got my kind of humor and didn't expect me to be anything but myself. We started seeing each other more and more after that night, movies, walks in the park, the occasional concert when we felt like splurging. One evening, a few months in, we were at his place, a modest but cozy apartment he'd designed himself. We were on the couch, a movie forgotten on the TV as we talked about our days. Today was nuts. This lady spent an hour deciding between two identical teapots. I mean, they were literally the same, Aaron. How does that even happen? I vented, still amused by the absurdity of it. He grinned, pulling me closer. Maybe she was just trying to make a perfect choice. Kind of like how I feel with you. That caught me off guard, and I looked up at him, trying to figure out if he was joking. But he was serious. "What do you mean?" "I mean, every day with you feels like I'm making the right choice. No second guessing, no regrets. It's easy with you, Elise." It wasn't just the words, but the way he said them, like it was the simplest truth in his world. That night, we kissed for the first time, right there on that couch, and it felt like everything just clicked. Months flew by, and soon a year had passed. Aaron and I were inseparable, and I knew I was falling hard. It was on our first anniversary that he surprised me. We went back to the same coffee shop where we'd had our first date. "Elise, I've got something for you," he said, handing me a small, beautifully wrapped box. Inside was a key. I looked up at him, puzzled. "It's a key to my apartment. I want you to move in, if you're up for it," he explained, his eyes searching mine for any hint of hesitation. I didn't need to think twice. Yes, I'd love to. And just like that, we started a new chapter together. Life with Aaron was as natural as breathing. He never made me feel like just a girlfriend. I was his partner, his equal. We had our moments, sure, like any couple. But even when we argued, it was never long before one of us was cracking a joke, breaking the tension. He loved my baking, always praising even my most disastrous attempts. "Elise, you could burn water, and I'd still eat it," he'd tease, and I'd throw a dish towel at him, laughing. That's how it was with us. No pretenses, no drama, just two people who got each other, building a life together one day at a time. When Aaron proposed, it was simple, no big dramatic gesture, just us on the couch with a ring and him saying, "So, you want to make this official or what?" I laughed and said yes, 100 times yes. The wedding planning flew by, thanks mostly to his mom, Judy, who was a saint. She helped me pick out the dress, the flowers, everything. Aaron's dad, Mike, was seriously ill with cancer, but he was hell-bent on being there. "Wouldn't miss seeing you in that dress for the world," he joked with a wink that made me blush and laugh. The big day was a blur of smiles and tears. Mike, pale but smiling, managed to make it. Every moment felt like something out of a dream, except for Aaron's sister, Claire. She was there, all right, dressed to the nines, and looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. During the reception, I caught her eye, and she just rolled hers, whispering something to her husband who looked just as uncomfortable. It stung, but I wasn't about to let her ruin my day. After the wedding, things settled down. Or at least, they should have. I got on famously with Judy. We'd go shopping, walk around the neighborhood, or I'd just come over and help her around the house. It was during one of these days that Claire's true colors showed even brighter. One evening, we were all at Judy's for dinner. The house smelled like roast beef and the laughter was plenty, except from Claire, who seemed to have her nose turned up at everything. "Elise, dear, can you pass the salt?" Judy asked, her smile warm. As I reached over, Claire muttered loud enough for just me to hear. "Still playing the doting daughter-in-law? Trying to butter her up for the will, are you?" I paused, my hand mid-air, then passed the salt to Judy. "I'm just here to help, Claire. You should try it sometime." She scoffed, sipping her wine. "I don't need to try anything. I'm not the one who came from a little shop, trying to play high society." Her words were like a slap, but I bit back the anger. Aaron squeezed my knee under the table, his way of saying he was there for me. Later, when Judy went to bed, Aaron confronted Claire. "What's your problem with Elise? She's done nothing but good for Mom." Claire's face hardened. "You're blind, Aaron. She's here for what she can get. That's what these people do." "These people?" I snapped, unable to hold back. "You mean people who work for a living?" "Yeah, I was a saleswoman. So what? At least I'm not pretending to be something I'm not." Aaron stood up, his chair scraping back. "That's enough, Claire. If you can't be civil, maybe you shouldn't come around as much." Claire stormed out, her husband trailing behind her, throwing apologetic glances our way. Aaron and I cleaned up in silence. The next few months were tough. Mike's health declined rapidly. Despite the strain and sorrow, I tried to be there for Judy as much as I could. Mike passed away quietly one night, leaving us all a bit emptier. Aaron took it hard, and I did my best to support him, to be his rock. Claire, who'd been absent more often than not, suddenly turned up again, her eyes scanning the house like she was taking inventory. At Mike's funeral, she was tearful, playing the part of the grieving daughter, but her tears seemed as hollow as her previous accusations against me. A few weeks after Mike passed, Judy decided it was time to settle his affairs once and for all. She invited us all to dinner. As we sat around the dining table, the air thick with anticipation, Judy cleared her throat and unfolded a stack of papers. "I've got Mike's will here," Judy announced, her voice steady but soft. "He had some specific wishes about how things should be handled." Judy continued, "Half of everything goes to me, as we expected. The other half will be divided among Mike's future grandchildren." She paused, looking over her glasses. "And the firstborn grandson will receive a bonus of $200,000. Claire was practically vibrating in her seat. "Well, I guess that sets our priorities, huh?" she said, half joking but with a greed I hadn't seen so openly before. "Let's not make hasty decisions," her husband muttered, but Claire was already on a roll. "This means we start trying seriously, babe. It's important," she insisted, her voice tinged with desperation that didn't suit the dinner table. From then on, Claire's obsession with conceiving became the focal point of her life. Every family gathering, she'd update us on their progress, or lack thereof, with a frankness that bordered on uncomfortable. "We've been to 3 specialists this month alone," Claire complained one evening as we all tried to enjoy a quiet dinner. "Do you have any idea how much this is costing us?" Her fixation deepened when they moved on to artificial insemination. The hormonal treatments took a toll on her, physically and emotionally. She gained weight, which only fueled her frustration and desperation. Her struggles cast a shadow over our family meetings. Claire's obsession with getting pregnant overshadowed even simple conversations. It got to the point where I found excuses not to attend gatherings, especially if I knew she'd be there in one of her moods. Aaron tried to stay neutral, but even he was wearing thin. "She's my sister, but I can't deal with this every time we see them," he confessed one night as we lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. "I know, love. Maybe give her some space? She's got a lot on her plate right now with all the treatments and pressure," I suggested, though I felt for Claire, her behavior made it hard to be around her. As time wore on, Claire's single-minded pursuit of motherhood began to isolate her, even from those who wanted to support her. All we could do was watch and wait, hoping that something would give, for better or worse. The day Claire announced her pregnancy should have been purely joyful. "I'm pregnant," she declared during a family brunch, her eyes scanning the table for our reactions. Aaron and I offered our genuine congratulations. "That's great news, Claire. Really happy for you guys," Aaron said, passing her a smile across the table. I nodded in agreement, trying to add warmth to the tense air. Despite our attempts at keeping things friendly, Claire seemed to brew a storm inside her, always ready to snap. Her mood swings were wild, and every small thing set her off. The family tiptoed around her, but I bore the brunt of her sharp tongue more than anyone else. I learned to keep my distance, but that was about to become harder. One morning, feeling unusually queasy, I took a pregnancy test. The positive result left me stunned and elated. I shared the news with Aaron, who was over the moon. "We're going to have a baby," I whispered, and we held each other, lost in our little bubble. We decided to share the news with Judy first, hoping for a moment of happiness amid the ongoing tensions. Walking into Judy's house, hand in hand, we found not only Judy but also Claire, who'd apparently come over earlier. "Mom, Elise has something to tell you," Aaron began, his voice filled with pride. I smiled, a bit nervous about Claire's presence. "I'm pregnant, Judy. We just found out." Judy's face lit up with delight. "Oh, my darlings, that's wonderful. 2 grandchildren on the way." But Claire's reaction was far from congratulatory. Her face drained of color, and her lips thinned. "You planned this, didn't you?" she hissed, her voice low and menacing. "Trying to steal my thunder and my child's inheritance." I froze, shocked by her accusation. "Claire, that's not true. It just happened." Her voice escalated, and she stood, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You're lying. This is all a setup." You want the money, that's all you've ever wanted. We should get a DNA test on that baby. Who knows if it's even Aaron's? Aaron stepped between us, his face dark with anger. Enough, Claire. I won't let you insult my wife like that. You owe Elise an apology. Claire scoffed, her cheeks flushed with anger or shame, I couldn't tell. I'm not feeling well, she muttered, grabbing her purse and storming out, leaving a stunned silence behind. Judy reached for my hand, her eyes sympathetic. Don't mind her, dear. It's just the hormones and jealousy speaking. I tried to smile, but Claire's words had cut deep. Tears spilled over, and I wiped them angrily. I just don't understand why she has to be so cruel, I murmured. The joy of our announcement had been overshadowed by Claire's outburst, and though Judy tried to smooth things over, the damage was done. The remainder of our visit was spent discussing baby names and plans, but Claire's shadow hung over us all. Judy called me up early on a bright Tuesday morning, her voice warm and inviting. Elise, dear, why don't you come over for coffee? I baked your favorite apple pie, she said, and I could almost smell the sweet aroma through the phone. Glad for a reason to get out of the house, I quickly agreed. I'll be there in 20 minutes, Judy. Can't wait. When I arrived, the house smelled heavenly, and Judy greeted me with a hug. Inside, to my surprise, Claire was there too, looking unusually quiet and almost shy. She even managed a small smile as I walked in. Elise, I want to apologize for last time, Claire said, her voice lower than usual. I was out of line. I've been dealing with a lot. Her apology, unexpected as it was, eased a bit of the tension I'd been carrying around. Thanks, Claire. Let's just move forward, okay? We settled at the kitchen table, the pie between us, its scent filling the room, inviting us to forget the awkwardness. Judy poured the coffee, and we started to chat about light, inconsequential things, Judy's garden, the weather, the little one on the way. Halfway through our second slice of pie, a headache began to pound at my temples, a common annoyance during my pregnancy. I must have winced, because Judy immediately noticed. You okay, dear? You look a bit pale. Just a headache, nothing new these days, I replied, trying to brush it off with a smile. Oh, I have just the thing, Judy said, rising from her seat. I have some headache medicine that's safe for pregnancy. Claire, honey, could you fetch it? It's in the medicine cabinet. Claire nodded and left to retrieve it, returning moments later with a pill and a glass of water. Here you go, Elise. This should help. I thanked her, swallowing the pill without a second thought, trusting Judy to know what was safe. But as I took the glass back to the kitchen to rinse it out, my eyes caught on something in the trash that sent a cold shiver down my spine. Among the usual rubbish, a discarded medicine package stood out, its label stark against the banana peels and coffee grounds. It was a chemotherapy drug, one that I instantly recognized from the time we had helped Mike through his treatments. Panic seized me as I remembered the clear warnings about its effects on pregnancy. Dropping the glass in the sink, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. The operator picked up immediately, and I quickly explained what had happened. Ma'am, you need to try to purge that from your system immediately. Drink water and try to induce vomiting, the dispatcher instructed urgently. I turned the tap on full blast, gulping down glass after glass of water before kneeling in front of the toilet. As I forced myself to vomit, tears mixed with fear and betrayal stung my eyes. What was going on? How had this happened? My head was spinning, not just from the physical effort, but from the shock and betrayal I felt swirling inside me. When I finally managed to stagger out of the bathroom, the sight of Judy and Claire standing there, pale and confused, only intensified my feelings of unease. What on earth is going on, Elise? Judy's voice was filled with worry. Claire, on the other hand, looked like she was seeing a ghost, her face drained of all color. I found something in the trash, I managed to say between gasps. It was Mike's chemotherapy drugs. Claire, did you give me those? Before Claire could respond, I heard sirens outside. The EMTs burst through the door, their presence a small comfort in the chaos. As they started to check on me, I dialed Aaron's number with trembling fingers. "Aaron, I need you here," I choked out as soon as he answered. He was at my side within minutes, his face etched with concern. "What happened?" he demanded, looking from me to his sister and mother. I think Claire gave me something dangerous. Not just a headache pill. I found the chemo meds in the trash right after taking what she gave me," I explained hurriedly. Claire's reaction was immediate and defensive. "You're being dramatic, Elise. I just gave you what Mom told me to. Why would I do something to hurt you?" But her words didn't sit right with anyone, not with the evidence of the discarded medication packaging that was strictly for cancer treatment. Judy, struggling to keep up, finally said, "I told her to give you paracetamol, I swear." "Claire, please tell me you didn't. Why are we even discussing this? She's just trying to get attention." Claire interrupted, her voice rising in panic. That's when Aaron stepped in, his tone icy. "We're calling the police. We need to sort this out properly." Claire paled even further, if that was possible. "The police? Aaron, come on, think this through. She's making a mistake." But it was too late. Aaron had already dialed, and within moments, the police arrived, adding another layer of seriousness to the situation. They listened to our accounts, their expressions grim. "Ma'am, we'll need to take that package of medicine for fingerprints," one of the officers said after I pointed out the trash where I had seen the discarded drugs. Claire seemed to shrink with every word the police said, her earlier bravado draining away as quickly as her color. Meanwhile, the ambulance team decided I needed to be at the hospital for a thorough checkup and possibly more treatments to ensure no residue of the harmful drug was left in my system. It was a surreal couple of days following the hospital scare. Sitting in the living room, still trying to wrap my mind around the recent events, the phone rang. Aaron answered it, his face tightening as he listened. When he hung up, he looked at me with a mix of relief and sorrow. "They arrested Claire," he said quietly. "Her fingerprints were all over the medication package." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What did she say?" "She claimed she'd touched those meds before, just moving them around in Dad's room," Aaron continued, rubbing his forehead in frustration. "But Mom told the police that wasn't possible. She said those meds were kept in a locked cabinet ever since Dad got sicker. Claire never had access until that day." A few days later, we found ourselves in a courtroom, the air thick with tension. Claire looked pale, her eyes darting around nervously. During the trial, the truth spilled out in the ugliest of ways. Under the pressure, Claire confessed. She admitted to trying to harm our unborn child to ensure her position in the inheritance queue. The courtroom was in shock. To make matters even more shocking, it emerged that Claire wasn't even pregnant. She had fooled everyone with a prosthetic belly, plotting to eventually adopt a child from another state to pass off as her own. Her deception ran deep, and even her husband was kept in the dark, told that their non-existent intimate life during her pregnancy was to protect the baby. Thankfully, the doctors confirmed that my quick actions had prevented any harm to our baby. Claire was found guilty and sentenced to 3 years in prison. Judy, with tears in her eyes, requested the court to adjust Mike's will, cutting Claire out completely. The judge agreed, and just like that, Claire's ties to her father's legacy were severed. Her husband, unable to stomach her betrayal, filed for divorce. Even Judy, who had always tried to see the best in her daughter, couldn't find it in herself to forgive Claire's actions. Months later, our lives took a happier turn. I gave birth to a healthy, beautiful boy, who had my eyes and Aaron's smile. He was our miracle after a storm, a sign that life could indeed be beautiful. According to Mike's will, he received the promised $200,000, which we decided to save for his education. One morning, sitting back, I watched our son play, his laughter filling the room, a stark contrast to the darkness we had faced. Aaron wrapped his arms around us, a silent vow that as long as we were together, nothing could break us. "Everything ended well, didn't it?" I murmured, leaning back against him. It did, he confirmed, kissing the top of my head. It really did. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what came our way, the love of our little family would always be our strength. We had weathered the storm, and now it was time to enjoy the calm.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.